Hi again. So this is part 2 of lecture 4. And we're just continuing our discussions about early intervention. Okay. So this is about universal or targeted approaches. So in terms of, many families need more support than is available through universal services, such as schools and GPs, for example. But early intervention works best when it targets particular families or individuals on a selective or indicated basis. So what we mean by targeted selective intervention is that's more it's more of a universal approach. So for example, it's offered to families on the basis of broad demographic risks, and it's also has more potential to prevent problems from arising in the first place because of that more broader universal approach. Whereas targeted indicated interventions are more targeted in the sense that they're offered to families who have been identified as having specific or diagnosed problems requiring more intensive support. And in these cases, early intervention can no longer prevent problems from occurring, but has the potential to help in treating the problems and minimizing, reversing long-term impacts on child development. Whereas the targeted selected version is really about making sure that there's more of an inclusive approach to everybody having the right to, a positive well-being. And although children growing up in these circumstances may not be suffering any specific problems, interventions that select families on the basis of the kinds of risks have the potential to keep any more problems arising or being instigated. And this model here, demonstrates the principle of progressive universalism in action. So it's just an example, again, to build on what we've just discussed. It also highlights one of the defining features of a new approach to improving children's outcomes. And that's namely the location of the core responsibility for identifying and supporting vulnerable children in universal services. For example, the NHS and the children's centres for the under fives and schools for older children are an example of that. And what this diagram shows, and this is specifically a diagram from the Children's Trust in Luton, which is part of the NHS, and it shows how there's a downward thrust of support in provision and also a decreasing complexity of need as you go downwards of this kind of needs triangle. It's like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs in a way. But so the most high intensity support and more complex support is at the top, and it slowly gets less complex as we go along, and this is the most inclusive kind of provision. So that's just an example to demonstrate what we've been discussing. And here are just some very quick examples of early intervention programs in relation to parenting practitioners. So this is from the National Association of Parenting Practitioners. So again, there's loads more other examples here, but I just thought I'd give you a sense of what they look like, what their names are, and you could go and look into more detail if you wanted, or try and find others. So the list is there. Certainly ones that I'm aware of in my local community are things like Strengthening Families Together, and also Mellow Parenting and Family Links. I've heard of them before. And Incredible Years. Okay. And what's really important in terms of any process, any intervention, early intervention, is the process. So again, this is just to highlight this little detail which you might want to mention in your assessment. It all depends on what depth you're going into, but it's really important for you to be aware of this just for your own benefit as well. So families may be reluctant to accept help, for example. So if they have had poor experiences in the past of services, or if the intervention is offered in a way that they find stigmatizing, they might not want to engage with the service. So some fear being labelled as a bad parent, or they are worried about their child and that they could be taken into care. I mean, those are very serious fears. And this is one of the number of reasons why the third sector has an important part to play in early intervention. So third sector interventions can seem less threatening and stigmatizing than statutory services, e.g. like very hardcore government services, NHS, whatever. But so third sector is things like charities and other organisations, social enterprises, and they're often seen to be more approachable. We also know that some services have high acceptability because of their professional status and branding. So, for example, the NHS, nurses, midwives and doctors are well trusted by the public, and outreach has a big part to play in making sure children who need help most get it. So there's a good relationship between services, and statutory service examples of things like social work. And so the diagram here, it just highlights how important it is to start early, and if there are problems, then a good assessment is taking place, and then there's comprehensive, purposeful responses to tackle the problem and good follow-up. Okay. So why is early intervention important? Well, it can offer children the support needed to reach their full potential, and that's all children deserve that. And that's why the more open, broader level of intervention is useful, as I mentioned in this diagram, because then it infiltrates more children, and every child deserves a good, full, healthy life. But early interventions can also improve the quality of a child's home and family life, enable them to perform better at school and support their mental health and well-being. And research also suggests that early help can protect children from harm, reduce the need for a referral to child protection services, and improve children's long-term outcomes. And of course, early intervention saves the taxpayer and the government and society a lot of money as well. Early help can also support a child to develop strengths and skills that can prepare them for adult life, which we mentioned earlier. And this is a really good slide and diagram. I've added these text boxes to just give you a little bit more information on each area that's coloured here. But generally, early intervention can achieve good positive results in physical, cognitive, behavioural and social and emotional areas of a child's development. And these are the areas that we have the potential to make the biggest difference and provide benefits throughout a person's life. So, in terms of physical development, it involves children's physical health, maturation, so the maturing, and the presence or absence of a physical disability. And it also provides the basis for positive development in all other areas. So physical outcomes targeted by early intervention activities include improving birth outcomes, reducing incidence of infectious diseases, and also decreasing childhood obesity. In terms of cognitive development, this includes children's acquisition of speech and language skills, their ability to read and write, their numeracy capabilities, and their understanding of logical problem solving. But it's also positive cognitive development is strongly associated with children's success in school and entry into the workforce, for example. And cognitive outcomes typically targeted by early intervention include performance on standardized tests, school achievement, and higher education and employment opportunities once they leave school. And the behavioural development involves children's ability to monitor and regulate their own behaviour, attention, and impulses. So children's self-regulatory skills are highly associated, for example, with their ability to form positive relationships with others, as well as their success in school. And behavioural self-regulation difficulties during childhood are highly predictive of children's involvement in criminal activity during the teenage years and adulthood. So behavioural outcomes frequently targeted by early intervention include reducing antisocial behaviour and crime, violence and aggression at school, and affiliation with antisocial peers. And finally, social and emotional development involves children's awareness of their own emotional needs and the emotional needs of others. Social and emotional development also encompasses the development of children's self-esteem and their ability to manage negative feelings. This kind of development is strongly associated with a child's ability to form positive relationships with others and reduced risk of depression and other mental health outcomes. Early intervention outcomes associated with children's social and emotional development include increasing pro-social behaviour, improving self-esteem, and reducing the incidence of clinically diagnosed mental health problems. Now, of course, it all depends on how things are measured, but this kind of information is based on a vast range of evidence. And we'll be looking at it more critically in our seminars. But generally, this gives us a really good outline and a good foundation of our understanding of what early intervention can achieve. And you'll see by what's included there is that you'll be aware of some of these areas of child development because of the work you've done in developmental psychology at level 4 in the last academic year. So have a look back at those slides and lectures in developmental psychology if it helps you here. Okay, and there are 3 additional threats that early intervention try to target as well, which is to reduce substance misuse, reduce risky sexual behaviour and child mistreatment. And they're hugely important and are associated with adverse outcomes during adolescence and adulthood. And finally, just to end this part of the lecture, which is part 2, it's just to make you aware of this training opportunity, and you don't have to do it at all, but it's there. If you're really interested in early intervention and the importance of a person's childhood, then this training is here for an introduction to adverse childhood experiences and early trauma. Now, it is quite heavy and it's quite it can be quite disturbing for some. There is a little quiet space that you can go into whenever you like during the 50 minutes. So you can do that, but just if you would like to do it, it's there and you get a little certificate at the end. Okay, so I'm going to stop there because it's almost 15 minutes again, but that is the end of that kind of section part of the lecture about early intervention. And in the next part, so part 3 of the lecture, we'll be talking about the other areas of intervention examples, for example, health and physical activity and learning, etc. Okay, so see you soon in part 3 of lecture 4.